Hi, everybody. Welcome to this latest episode of Real Talk with Rick. We are going to have another COVID conversation. The last episode, Scott Gerber, City Fire Chief, Emergency Management Director, was in here to talk about what was happening related to the coronavirus, and I think it probably would have been, the first couple weeks or month of the effect of the virus on the city operations and emergency operations. This episode, I'm bringing back another guest we've had on as well. Dave Lindahl is the city's economic development manager. He was also in a previous podcast. I believe it was podcast 18 that I mentioned, and I encourage all of you to go back and listen to that and get some background on the city's history with economic development and what Dave, being a homegrown Eden Prairie product, has experienced his entire life in Eden Prairie. But in this particular episode, I asked Dave to talk about what he is seeing, what he has witnessed, and what is occurring mainly in the business community in Eden Prairie related to the COVID virus as we sit here today at this stage of the pandemic. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Dave Lindahl. Dave Lindahl, welcome back.
Thank you.
Hey,
good
Dave,
to be back.
Yeah. You know, we've had these, this will be the second COVID conversation we're doing, and we had a repeat guest, Scott Gerber, for the last episode. And then, Dave, you were number 18 podcast.
Yeah.
And you remember doing that a while back?
I do. I
Yeah.
remember being a little bit hurt that it took 18 tries before I got a call, but
Yeah.
it's okay.
But
now I'm back again.
You're back.
Now I'm feeling really good.
That's good.
Special.
We did we had some special effects for your podcast too. That was like the first time we were able to play around with some sound effects that you led us to.
I thought
Remember that
was awesome, Johnny. Yeah,
Did
you
like that?
have a great producer.
Yeah, Johnny Exotic.
Johnny
Exotic's our producer. Yeah. So
yeah,
he did a great job with that.
What kind of screams are you going to have this time? I told him screaming businesses.
Screaming businesses. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you. That's kind of a good segue because the last podcast with Fire Chief Gerber, we talked a lot about emergency management, how city services are operating, which I think is similar to today as it was to that period in time. Limited amounts of people in City Hall and closed buildings, but public safety still operating, responding to calls. And Scott talked about that, talked about our EOC. I know you've been in our EOC with our daily briefings on behalf of community development. But I thought this conversation could be more about the community and about business community, because if people have not listened to podcast number 18, you are the city's economic development manager, and you do have connections with our business community all the time. And boy, what a time now to be having that connection. It must be just fascinating for you. But I want to hear a little bit about that. Can you maybe talk through maybe what you've been doing this last month or so, maybe how the conversation started out with some of the different businesses, and I'll just kind of let you walk through it on your own.
Sure.
I know that there's stuff happening at the federal and state level with SBA and the state Department of Employment and Economic Development. I know you're in touch with those people as well, but how are things going? What's happening?
Overall going well, staying very busy, doing a lot of outreach. I've got, unfortunately, with all these years of being an employee of the city, I've got a lot of relationships with businesses, so I've been calling people and they're answering the phone or they're calling me back right away, which is great. But one of the immediate things that the state and the county did is they're having these, first it was daily, and now it's maybe weekly or a couple times a week, having these large conference calls where they have, people sharing information about resources that are available. For example, the Commissioner of Deed, for a while there, every morning he would have a meeting, and he would have the commissioners of labor and industry and of revenue and Department of Commerce. So you'd have all kind of the key staff. They're kind of talking through all the different things that they're doing to deal with the COVID virus and all the impacts it's having to the state and businesses. And so I will listen to that, and anyone that listens to it has an opportunity to provide questions. And I did that, I think within a couple days, because we were very interested in knowing, who in Eden Prairie, which businesses are receiving loans or resources or getting help. And so that's a common question that they're hearing. And unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of forthcoming data from either DEED or the SBA. And it sounds like the SBA is going to have a real challenge with providing, loan data by city. They're talking about being able to do that by state and maybe by region. But I think DEED at some point will be able to share with the city, how many of our businesses have actually received funding through their various programs. But the bad news is, they are overwhelmed with applications, and they're thinking they're only going to get to maybe 10% of the businesses that have needs throughout the state. So I'm sure Eden Prairie's numbers will reflect that. Hennepin County's kind of done the same thing. They have a meeting. They have a meeting with all the economic developers throughout the county, and that's been a real good meeting too, because we hear about they invite folks from the SBA and from banks, to kind of share their experience and share some of the details that economic developers should be aware of in terms of what businesses need to do to kind of navigate, the process and try to get to the funding sources quickly. And you hear from other cities kind of what they're doing and sharing stories. And, some cities are doing certain things and others are kind of maybe waiting a little bit. I've been doing a lot of that.
The maybe small businesses, a lot of what I've been reading about is it's the connection through the bank that people have.
Yes.
So whether it's the bigger banks, and then there was an issue with Wells Fargo having kind of a limit on how much they could work with. It was like $10 billion or something. Yeah. And then you've got like U.S. Bank and then all these small banks and all these credit unions. So it seems that these small businesses having a banking relationship and then the assistance that they're providing to fill out a lot of the paperwork seems to be a big part of the equation.
It is. What I'm hearing and kind of what we're reading about in the paper too is that if you have a relationship with a bank, you're going to get served first. I mean, and I can't blame banks for wanting to take care of their longtime customers first.
Yeah.
I mean, some are being criticized for that. A couple of the local banks I've talked to here have said, yeah, I mean, we want to take care of our existing customers, but we're also taking on new customers too. However, just the volume is just so huge that it's just taking time to get through to people, to be able to help. Banks right now, I'd say, are probably some of the busiest people out there, trying to process all these loans and grant programs.
Yeah, the banks are busy. And restaurants, I think you had an update for us internally about the number of restaurants that are in town that are open, that are still serving like takeout, delivery and takeout, some that are just completely closed. Do you remember those numbers?
I do, yeah. So, yeah, that was one of the first things I started thinking about, because, restaurants, a lot of them were required to close their doors, right, to walk-in business or sit-down business. So of the about 107 restaurants that I could identify in Eden Prairie, and that's, fast food, that's, fine dining and everything in between, only 14 were completely closed. So most were open for either curbside, drive-through, takeout, delivery. And, I made kind of just a few calls to some different restaurants that were open. Most of them are doing pretty good. Like Tavern 4 and 5, obviously a lot of their business are people coming in and dining
right.
at the bar. So they're doing a great curbside business, but it's only 25% of their total, their normal business. So it's down significantly.
So even when they're saying that business is doing well and they're busy, it's still
only 25% of their normal volume of business. But let's move over to like DeTello's. I talked to them today. They're doing very well. I mean, they are almost at their normal business, doing takeout and primarily carry out and curbside. And I'll tell you one thing. A couple words that kind of come to mind as I talk to, I would say, not just restaurants, but just a lot of the small businesses. It's just grateful, because there are so many people that are being loyal to the businesses that they frequent. You know, Smith Coffee, I heard that from Ann Schuster, just so grateful. And people, I guess, are really tipping, and they're being very generous. So I keep hearing this, you know.
Well, that'd be new for you.
Wow, well, not the normal 25%. Yeah, they're expecting 30.
Right.
But it's you know, so some of the words I'm hearing, which is great, because I half expect when I make this call that, you know, it's going to be depressing. It really hasn't been. You know, most of the businesses I have talked to have been hopeful. That's a word I hear. Grateful, because, you know, people are still wanting to keep, if it's a restaurant, their favorite restaurant in business. I'm one of them. You know, Tavern's one of my favorites, so we've been there a lot. Resourceful. You know, an example is, I mean, some businesses have had to completely pivot, right, and kind of figure out what they're going to do to make money. Flying Dutchman Distillery, which is, Rick, as you know, is a fairly new startup business in Eden Prairie. They're our only distillery. And one of the things that they're doing, and they've got a new product that they just started selling last week, and they're called Quarantinis. And so you can buy a Quarantini kit, and Leanne and I ordered one on Friday, and then you go up to the curb, they come out, you put your license up to the window, they have a little video to show you what to do, and they come out and make sure that you're 21, and then they set it on the curb, and you walk out and get it. And within the Quarantini kit, and there's about 6 different ones you can order. You know, you get your small bottle of, in this case, gin. You get your mix. You get your, you know, a variety of, depending on the drink, it's got a variety of other things in it. And then you get hand sanitizer.
Oh, wow.
So you get a bottle of hand sanitizer. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that they have done, is they've been making hand sanitizer and donating it to the Eden Prairie Fire and Police, apparently.
Yes.
And now each customer that picks up a Quarantini will also get a bottle of hand sanitizer. So that, I thought, was a great example of a business that is being very creative and, you know, resourceful and trying to figure out a way to survive and kind of get through this.
I think I was reading just yesterday, that, and this might have to go through the legislature, that a lot of the bars and restaurants are asking if they could sell alcohol to go, for takeout. They've got food.
There's a big lobby right now.
So look at your Tavern 4 and 5, right?
Exactly.
And I got the email as well that they were preparing Easter dinners, and you can get an Easter dinner from Tavern 4 and 5. In many of these other places as well, including the kitchen that operates here at City Center is available. Smoking Hot Dish is available for delivery and takeout. But the Tavern 4 and 5s and the others are saying, boy, it'd be nice to supply a certain amount of alcohol to go, because that's...
Beer and wine.
Yeah, it's a big part of the business of a lot of the restaurants, right?
Absolutely, 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
And I, you know, of course, I'm the economic development guy. I completely support that.
Yeah.
You know, how it's actually executed, if it's you know, and I know the governor's feeling a lot of pressure in the legislature to try to do something, because many other states are doing it. In fact, when I was reaching out to businesses, I wanted to call Optum and kind of see how they were doing in general. And my niece works for Optum, but she's located in Denver. So I called her. And she gave me a nice update of the different things that are happening at Optum. But she also talked about, you know, the fact that restaurants, you can go up, and actually I think they allow them to make mixed drinks. You can pick up a mixed drink with your food. And I thought, wow, how does that work? She goes, well, they just put a top on it like a coffee to-go drink, and it's working. I'm not sure that's going to happen here in Minnesota. I mean, what I'm reading today, it just sounds like maybe beer and wine might be a choice, but that will add a lot more sales revenue for bars and restaurants.
Sure, because I think the feeling is, even if things start to slowly open up in May or June or whenever, there's still a lot of people that will be hesitant to gather at restaurants, even if they're open. And we don't know, you know, sitting here today, what's going to happen, you know, a month or 2 months from now. But maybe until there's a vaccine, or until people have tested for the antibodies, that they might not be comfortable doing that. So I think restaurants are looking for kind of a, not long-term, but a little longer-term solution.
Absolutely. And, you know, I need to add that there are some other businesses that really are severely impacted by the closures. You know, I reached out to an Eden Prairie business called Midwest Oral and Maxillofacial Oral Surgery. And, their business is down 90+%. The Board of Dentistry basically is requiring that the only work they can do is emergency work. So think about that.
Well, you had Starkey had some
major
layoffs.
Yep.
It depends on the industry, right? So we have formerly SuperValue Unify, a big corporate presence here, obviously is probably doing well, but then you have Starkey, Life Touch is moving ahead with adding their positions, but then on the other hand, you're hearing about businesses that are not operating.
Exactly. So, the fallout from this, I guess, it's going to take time, I guess, for us to really understand what it is. Fortunately, people are optimistic. They're hoping that there will be a rollout after May 4th of new business openings. What that looks like, I don't think we know yet. That's a lot of what Steve Grove, the commissioner at DEED, has talked about is, right now they're asking for ideas on which businesses should open or could open first safely. And they're getting a lot of feedback from businesses. And so they're just kind of allowing businesses to say, how can you open and open safely? Where people can keep their distance and, assuming that there's still going to be issues out there within the next couple months.
And I don't think you and I don't remember if you and I talked about this. I know I talked about this with the mayor and others, that this essential business definition, when this began a few weeks back, 2-3 weeks back, there was a lot of question about what is an essential business, and a lot of people were contacting local government, city manager, economic development manager, the mayor and others to say, could you qualify me as an essential business? And
can we get an exemption?
Can we get an exemption?
Yeah.
And that's not something the city does. It's something that the state does. But as you've seen, that has evolved a little bit over time. Most recently with landscapers.
Yep.
And what Bachman's is most likely going to open up soon, right?
Yep.
And I don't. Are there any others in the garden landscape? That's the biggest one. But there may be others that they're going to open.
Yep.
In Eden Prairie and some other businesses,
which is good.
Yeah. And then I can't remember the percent, but it's like somewhere in the 70+% range of people that are considered essential employees in the state.
Yeah, they're saying 82% now. Yeah. But hopefully that number will grow quickly because we need to get businesses open again. We just do. But obviously finding the balance between what is safe and dealing with the virus and not overwhelming our hospitals and ventilators and things like that. Well, speaking of that, if you don't mind me segueing.
Go.
There are businesses all over the country. When I talked about pivoting, but they're trying to find ways to, if they're manufacturers, find ways to try to help address the virus in one way or another. And personal protection equipment is obviously there's huge demand for that. And so we do have some Eden Prairie businesses that are looking at some different things. Augustine Medical apparently is looking for funding to try to get they have a filtered mask that can be reused by just changing out the filter. And they've been talking with Hennepin County and others looking for potential investors to help them kind of get this up and running quickly. Anagram Balloons, I had a conversation with them a couple weeks ago, and they're working with a couple different companies. One, they're part of they're part of the solution for a face shield. They would do like the headband portion of it, I guess. They would help manufacture that part of it. And then they're working with another company, and I can't remember if that company was from Texas or Glencoe, on respiratory tents.
Okay.
So, Eaton Corporation, I talked to the guy that runs the local plant. He goes, our local plant, we really haven't figured out what we can do with our machines to try to help. But he goes, but our corporate location in Cleveland's doing a number of different things to try to help with parts for ventilators and things like that. So there's different companies doing what they can to try to figure out what can we do to help, generate equipment that's needed so people can be safe or save lives.
Right. Yeah. No, those are good stories. The mall. We have a mall in Eden Prairie, and I think what's interesting about that is, several malls closed even on their own before the stay-at-home order. So I don't know if you've had conversations with them recently about, assuming that gets lifted, on May 4th, are we going to see places like the mall opening up?
Yeah, I have talked to the mall management, and it's it's unfortunate, but the mall did close, and with that, a number of restaurants, and it sounded like the mall ownership was being very conservative because there was a lot of discussion about, well, can we just leave the food court open, or can we leave certain the theater and try to manage through that, and they said no, let's just shut down. Minimize the liabilities of people getting sick or issues related to that. And of course, you can imagine, a lot of their tenants are going to need some kind of rent forgiveness in order to get through this. And so I think they're overwhelmed right now with dealing with those issues.
Right.
And of course, those businesses are closed. You and I have had some experience with that too, because we do have some tenants here at the city. And, at least a couple of our tenants reached out to us almost immediately and said, hey, we had to close because of the governor's executive order. Will you consider giving us some rent relief? And we did.
Yes.
And it's a reasonable request. But then what's happening as I talk to people is that the mall owners have to go talk to their bank. And they say, listen, I don't know if we can make our mortgage payment because we're not getting the revenue from our leases. And so the banks are having to deal with that. And then where do they go? Well, they're probably going to be looking ultimately for some federal assistance. In some cases, some people are trying to make insurance claims with a clause that's called force majeure, which means if there's some catastrophic kind of event, and a lot of people are saying this qualifies as a catastrophic event,
right. Yeah,
that it
absolutely.
can be an insurance claim. The losses related to the event can be recovered through an insurance claim, but there's a lot of lawyers kind of dealing with that right now, trying to sort through whether or not they feel like this really qualifies as a force majeure. So, yeah, the mall obviously is a huge asset for the city of Eden Prairie. A lot of businesses, they employ about 2,500 people. Shields, which is the latest huge expansion to the mall, was planning, as you know, Rick, to open. They have a grand opening on July 11th. That's been postponed. They also had a huge opening planned 3 weeks ago in Plano, Texas, which was postponed.
Did they give estimate on when that would be?
For Eden Prairie?
Yeah.
I have not heard yet. I was hearing late August. Someone told me yesterday they heard it was September, but I need to get a handle on it. We'll hear about it, right? Because the city's going to be a part of that event.
It seems that there's a lot of things that were scheduled for May, June that are pushed to July, August, not way far ahead. Even, Night to Unite. This is interesting, Night to Unite. And I didn't know the state could make a decree, but they stated that Night to Unite, National Night Out, is first Tuesday in August, where everyone gets together in their neighborhood and are visited by police and fire and city folks, that's getting pushed to October. So you're seeing a lot kind of moved into the fall.
Right. Well, Shields was working closely with the city because they're planning a very large celebration as part of their grand opening, and they want to make sure it's done right. And so hopefully they can get back at that. Maybe, hopefully in late August, it would be nice. But anyway, the opening of Shields, I think, obviously will be good for the mall in general. Right?
Absolutely.
It's going to generate a lot of traffic, and so. I'm sure
Huge
the mall
project.
ownership will be looking forward to that because they'll be trying to recover from their losses of being closed. So
you coming in here, you and I are socially distanced properly in City Center right now.
Yep, I measured.
But you've been working from home. A lot of the calls and a lot of the work you're doing. How's that going?
It's going great.
Okay.
I was fortunate in that I've had VPN for a long time, and I've been able to telecommute here and there. I used to do it a little more often, maybe an hour here, depending on the circumstances. But my wife works at home full time, and I didn't know how that was going to work because we're actually sharing the same space. Yeah. And it's actually an office/music room. So like my half of the room is really kind of pretty important to me.
Yeah.
But I will say this, it's been working out better than I expected. I was thinking, wow, there's going to be some tension here. Both of us kind of leave the room as needed for phone calls.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you have to be at the computer for the call. Other times you can just grab your cell phone and run it to the room next door, run upstairs. And so it's working actually very well.
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing that too.
Yeah.
Talking to different employees, I think what probably might be the biggest challenge, and this is talking to our city employees, other city managers, is people that are home with young kids. And you're working from home, maybe your spouse is, and you've got young kids, and I absolutely feel for people in that circumstance. My kids are all teenagers, or they're quite a bit older, but can you imagine? Because I know your kids are older too. Can you imagine having like a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old in your house right now?
The only kid I have is a Maltese dog.
Yeah.
And those are my breaks to get up from my chairs to take it out to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's pretty low maintenance. But no, that absolutely would be disruptive.
Yeah.
Just would be at times, right?
We've got to figure out a way to make it work, because some daycares aren't open. Kids are doing school from home. People are figuring it out.
Are they figuring it out?
They are figuring it out. They really are. And then, so you're out. Are you out on the bike? Because you're a big bike out in the. I want to talk about biking.
Yeah, I'm a
and
big
music.
recreational biker. Yeah, I've been out. I was out a lot up until when
this
did it
week.
start snowing?
Yeah, it's a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's been
a lot of people out there. Right?
There's a lot of people out there, which is great. I mean, there's for me, I love seeing people out and about. And my experience so far has been good. I mean, if I'm on the trails, you just have to slow down if you're on a bike and, let people know you're going to pass them, which I do normally anyway. Say thank you. I have not had any bad experience with people, barking at me for being on the trail or whatever. The regional trail, the Three Rivers Trail, from Eden Prairie to Hopkins was really busy on Saturday. And I was with a friend, and of course you're riding with someone you want to ride kind of tandem, and it was just really impossible. So we ended up on the road for the rest of the day, just to kind of avoid the crowds. But I think it's good to see it. As far as I can tell, people are being responsible and respectful. But it's still a little bit scary, right? Because you're going by people. You might be 4 feet away, you might be 6 feet, and some of them are breathing hard because they're running, and you're just. I'm not wearing a mask, so it crosses your mind. What's out there? What am I going to pick up? But I don't know. What's your experience been like? You're in Minneapolis, so it's got to be really busy down there.
Here, Minneapolis, everything between. No, I'm seeing great examples of social distancing. It's interesting. I mean, this is a whole other podcast, but I get reports on what's happening in Eden Prairie, and for the most part. It's going really well. I mean, what's interesting is, and I can pull up some of the calls that our city gets, that someone might say there are 25 people at the park, and then they arrive and there's really 5. Or, 14 people are playing basketball at a park and it's really 4 and they're social distance. And I'm not saying...
And it's a family.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not to say that there haven't been examples of education.
How about pickleball? I've been asked about pickleball, and their courts are open, right?
Yeah, they are. I think that, again, that's something, tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball. There are people out there that would wish they'd all be closed. Here, Bloomington, they've closed pickleball in Bloomington, and they've closed some of the courts in Edina, but many other courts, they're just asking for people to do social distancing. So you could play tennis from a distance.
Sure.
You could play singles pickleball. Like you said, Dave, you could have a family of 4 play pickleball that are together at home. Mm-hmm. Not maybe people noticing that from a distance aren't quite aware. So it's just
we're getting through it.
It's a classic balancing act of some people that say there should be no restrictions in public places.
And golf is kind of the other one.
Golf, to people saying that you shouldn't have anybody gathering. And in some of the cases, again, I'd say 9 out of 10, when our police department or parks or whomever respond, there is proper social distancing going on.
Yeah,
I know there's a complaint that once the police leave, then people gather again. I mean, it's something that you never would have even thought you'd be dealing with.
I know. That's been my observation too. Is that generally people are doing well. And as I go through neighborhoods, I see. I see people with their mobile fire pits in the driveway with a circle of people around, and they're keeping their distance. But I think it's neighbors even sometimes just needing to have a little bit of social time.
There was we just came off of Passover and Easter, and there was a call about an Easter egg hunt that someone was concerned about people were having. Well, what they did is they actually spread the eggs out, across different homes or a certain distance apart. So they were trying to keep people social distanced.
Probably the funniest story I've had so far riding my bike was I was going around Round Lake, and it was starting to get a little dark, and I was coming up the trail kind of from the parking lot towards the high school, kind of by the bridge crossing the Valley View Road, and all of a sudden I get up over the hill, and there's a van coming up the trail, and it's following two people who are very disturbed that this van is on the walking trail and following them. And
like a Scooby-Doo van, or like what kind of van?
Just like a caravan type van, and I'm kind of like, wow.
Windows, curtains?
I'm like, this is yeah, dazed.
Just trying to paint me the picture, Dave.
It could have. I was thinking dazed and confused,
man,
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't. Okay.
But I waited just to say, okay, I got to at least maybe bark in their window and let them know they shouldn't be on the trail, and I did, and they went by and they looked very confused and very lost, and I think they probably took a left when they should have taken a right.
Understood.
And went and ended up on the trail around Round Lake, and the Eden Prairie police were there to kind of catch them as they got back to the parking lot.
Redirect them out of the road.
They redirected them back onto the road. Yeah,
that's good. That's a good story. Music. If you've listened to Podcast 18. Music is a big part of what you do. How has that been going? Obviously, no gigs for the band, but how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, that's been tough. We've had gigs canceled, and we haven't been able to rehearse like we normally do. And I was telling Johnny earlier before the podcast started that there is software out there for musicians to be able to remotely play together. It's challenging because there's latency issues depending on your broadband capabilities. But I personally, I mentioned this to Johnny as well. I had a software recording program that I bought a new one, and I've been able to spend some time learning how to use it. It's a little different than the one I had before, and with all this extra time on my hands, I've definitely been doing some songwriting and recording, and it's a fun pastime.
Well, there's all these concerts from home that people are doing from their living rooms, whether it's on the different social media platforms, right?
Yeah, there's almost been too much of that.
Too much of it? Okay.
No, I shouldn't say that.
No, I've watched a little bit of that.
Well, I just noticed, like on my Facebook, it's the same three guys that are constantly putting something.
Well, there's people locally and then nationally. People are doing it from
absolutely.
Garth
from
Brooks.
the living room.
Yeah, Garth Brooks and
Sheryl Crow.
Yeah,
from living
exactly.
Room. Yeah.
John Prine. Were you a John Prine fan?
I was.
That's awful.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
That I'm a fan, or that he died?
No, that he died, that he passed away. No, I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan. That's sad news.
We were big fans mainly back in the 70s, when he kind of, I would say that was maybe his heyday, but it was very sad. Every day we're hearing of somebody passing away, unfortunately, from this virus. And he had a lot of illnesses and cancer.
He did.
And
he did.
Kept landing on his feet, which was great. But
you're quite a bit. You're quite a bit older than I am, so I didn't really discover him.
Well, I'm wiser than you. I don't know how much older than I am.
Two don't go together. But for me, coming out of college, I kind of found him, and this would have been late '80s, early '90s. But you're right, his heyday was like the next Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
coming out of the '70s with. Some of those one of the best songwriters ever.
Oh yeah.
But either way, I didn't until I just saw you now, and you're talking about music. That's a big loss.
John Breen's top 10 songs of his in the paper. Did you see that?
I did.
Or if you online, you could actually listen to it, which I did. I listened to every one of them. It was great.
It's just I have been listening to a lot of his stuff since he passed away. It's tragic, regardless of the cause. But we just kind of keep on keeping on for now, right?
That's all you can do, and as I mentioned early on, I'm just glad to see that people are keeping a kind of a positive attitude about all this, and I think that's great about Americans in general, right? They want to persevere, and they do persevere, and I'm getting that. I just get that. It's like we're dealing with it. We're going to get through it. Yes, there's going to be losses. Yes, we're going to be impacted. We don't know the extent of it, but we're going to get through it, and we're going to get back to normal, and the next pandemic, we're going to be much better prepared. So, we're learning a lot. So that is what I'm hearing almost universally from any business or person I'm talking to. Mm-hmm. That's to me, that is inspirational.
It is. It's encouraging to hear that there's positivity and hope.
Yeah. I mean, if this goes on too long, that's going to change. I think, you know what I mean? I think at some point people will start feeling a little more depressed about the whole thing. But so far, it's what I'm hearing, and people are hopeful and positive.
All right. Well, Dave, thanks for coming in again.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 18 more?
18 more, 18 okay. Podcasts from now? Podcasts, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, it depends.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.